Last Friday, Jim Bacon announced that Forestry Tasmania was to be the major sponsor for 10 Days on the Island. It's our leading international icon event. It was built upon the heritage of artists in Tasmania, and the artists were appalled. They were appalled because Forestry Tasmania continues to clear fell our forests, despite the fact that 70% of Tasmanians say stop. It's up to us to prove that we can have the state that we want by continuing to add our voice to this cause. This issue of 10 Days on the Island has taken the issue of clear felling in our old growth forests out of a green spectrum into a mainstream spectrum. It's a rare opportunity for us to really see the 70% of Tasmanians who really support the end of clear felling.
It was conceived of as being a total community experience, so there are 10 days. Events happen all around the island involving communities, artists from Tasmania, artists from overseas, and really it was at the 10 days, the last one was an absolute triumph, and it left people feeling special about this place, and I think it actually gives an even stronger edge to the debates that are happening because we see what might be, and yet it's, as soon as it gets within our grasp, we ourselves snatch it away. It's not that this is taken from us, but we just aren't brave enough to really just go the next step and grasp our future. That's why there's such overarching support for 10 Days on the Island. It's a magnificent expression of what the Tasmanian brand should be, and that's why I think, you know, currently at the moment we're in the midst of a huge debate about forestry sponsorship of 10 Days on the Island, and really what we have is the artists are giving voice to the fact that our brand messages are all screwed up, because they're saying we can't have Forestry Tasmania sponsoring 10 Days on the Island, which is supposed to be a manifestation of all that is right and good about the Tasmanian brand, when forestry stands for so much that is wrong. And the artists have been characterised as cultural fascists and green extremists, whereas really they're just citizens expressing a point of view, and a very sophisticated point of view about the future of Tasmania. And I think the debate about this is really, it's an important one that we have to have right now. And the artists are talking about economics. It's not an airy-fairy artistic debate. This is really serious mainstream economic issue.
I've always loved trees, and like everybody, I don't think there's anybody who doesn't love trees. There's something special about how they make you feel, and that we have to share this planet with every other creature. And I'd sort of been tinkering around the edges really, and just got angrier and angrier at the complete devastation that's going on in our forest here in Tasmania, and for absolutely no gain whatsoever. The wood chip industry and the timber industry is shedding jobs at a huge rate and becoming more mechanised, and our forests are becoming multinationalised, and I think it's basically a matter of social justice. And it's just maddening. It's about people's rights being trodden on this island, and the people have spoken out against this, and yet they've been ignored by politicians, and they're certainly being ignored by companies like Guns.
Tasmania Together was conceived by the Labor government in Tasmania as a process where the community could actually develop a 20-year plan for the future, a social, economic and environmental blueprint. Over 2 years, public consultations were held around Tasmania. A group of 24 community leaders, of which I was one, led that process, listened to people, took submissions and were asked to formulate a vision of the future. We felt that the voice of the Tasmanian people was very clear, that they said a number of clear things. One was that Tasmania is in serious trouble. Two, the future of the place really depended on us being able to capture something around the clean and green potential. They also wanted it to be a fair community, and they recognised the importance of, for the long term, for our future generations, the environment being clean. And they really wanted to see radical action now, because they realised that things aren't as good as they should be. One of the clearest messages that came from the Tasmania Together process was around clear felling in old growth forest. And they used terrific analogies. They said this is just like the last days of whaling. One of the biggest problems in the early history of Hobart was the fact that people couldn't get from one shore of the Derwent to the other safely for fear of hitting whales. Now it's almost unbelievable. A whale in the Derwent would cause national attention, and yet here we are at the last days of old growth forest, and yet we're still logging like maniacs right up to the line of the national parks. And people saw this as clearly wrong, and they said as much. And one of the things that I spoke out strongly about was that old growth logging had to finish. It was a touchstone issue for the people, and clearly it was something that the government had to commit to. But the Premier and Jim Bacon and Paul Lennon chose to ignore that recommendation from the group even when they finally made it. So it just goes to show how firmly entrenched the counter view is here. And that is, I think, why so many groups are being spawned now, like Doctors for Forests, Teachers for Forests, etc., because people really feel that the forestry issue is a major issue for Tasmania. We have to solve it. And it has to be solved in the right way, not just when the logs run out. If our forefathers had had enough sense about this, we might have still had problems in the Derwent with whales, which would be a wonderful thing.
Our forests are being wood chipped at a rate never seen before, and wood chips are selling for as little as $7 a tonne. You can make toilet paper and get more money out of our forests than wood chips. Okay, there are 3 Southwoods, if you like, planned for the state. Now, Forestry Tasmania, who are the people who are bringing Southwood into the world, are saying this is going to be a downstream processing technopark. This is about value added, this is about jobs, jobs, jobs. However, by using Forestry Tasmania's own figures, 76% of the timber that goes in one end will come out the other end of Southwood as wood chips. So it's a wood chip mill. Half of that amount of wood chips will be used to burn in a wood-fired power station. So not only is it a wood chip mill in reality, it's also a power station that uses our native forests as the energy source.
It's unimaginable to think that we are wood chipping our old growth forests in this state, sending those wood chips off to be processed somewhere else, and then importing pulp, which is a sort of value-added product to make our paper out of. So the economics of it just do not make sense, and I can't understand why this is going on. I guess somewhere along the line, shareholders or company chiefs are making $1 out of it, and they are well connected, so they're able to maintain the way things are, but it's certainly not delivering for Tasmanian local communities.
Now, in relation to the industry, let's first begin by saying that it is an important industry for the state. It employs about 8,000 people. It does turn over about 15%, 1.2 billion value added to the state's income. So in that sense, an important industry. So for me, it's not a question of getting rid of the industry. It's a question of looking at the debate surrounding the industry's operation and how forests are managed. There's a lot of money to be made actually out of a clean and green environment in tourism, and the potential for the eco-based tourism industry is large. In a sense, that does depend upon preservation of forests.
The role of Tourism Tasmania is the lead agency in the sense of marketing and promoting the state, both to national and international audiences. We're a very targeted approach with regards to the clients that we're chasing, but it's certainly to promote tourism and the benefits that tourism brings to the economy of an area such as Tasmania. 10% of its employment is generated through tourism activity, and of course that's one of every 10 Tasmanians employed in tourism, which is very significant. And it's worth currently $620 million per annum to the Tasmanian economy. And on top of that, of course, is interstate visitation of another 200 million, which brings it closely to $800 million as an industry. Well, definitely the 3 key elements to Tasmania is its nature-based product, the heritage aspects and the cultural aspects of the state, and the food and wine lifestyle. No doubts that those 3 key issues or key attributes are very key attractors for people to Tasmania. Yeah, visitors to the state, of course, undertake a range of activities, as I've mentioned, but about 70% of our visitors are involved in some form of nature-based activity.
When you look at Tasmania today, you see a community that's actually in a lot of trouble socially and economically. All the indicators are heading in the wrong direction. And when you look at the future, you have to ask yourself, what is it that Tasmania has that truly sets it apart and might form a, if you like, a golden egg for future generations? And the one thing is our identity and that which makes us different. And so what I've actually been exploring in the forestry issue is the notion of what is Tasmania's identity, and in an economic sense, what's the brand and what's the value of the brand that we have in the future. And really what I'm finding is that that brand is potentially a multi-billion-dollar asset to future Tasmanians, and it'll be manifest in things like food products, aquaculture, throughout the services industry, education, because people away from Tasmania see this as being something different and something that they yearn for, and it has certain values that they wish for. Quite clearly in your mind's eye, if you actually see a photo of Cradle Mountain or of Myrtle Rainforest, a Dombrovskis photo of the top of Mount Wellington, or the rusty coloured boulders of Freycinet or Flinders Island, that gives you a particular image that sums up in many ways the sort of brand, the wildness of Tasmania. And if you juxtapose that with a photo of a clearfell, it's quite obvious that the clearfell doesn't fit the brand that we're actually sending out to the rest of the world, the image we're sending to the rest of the world. And why I'm so passionate about the forest issue is that I feel that we have to have a forest industry that fits the brand that Tasmania wants to be. And at the moment it doesn't. Some of it does, but in terms of clear felling, old growth forest, it just doesn't fit at all.
Every brand will in fact be challenged from time to time with respects to perceptions that people might have. Forestry and tourism in this state are working very closely in many different areas. We are in fact benefiting from some of the new projects that Forestry have developed with respects to the Terhune Airwalk. Certainly a very popular attraction and a very good interpretive attraction. And in essence, with respects to other industry sectors, right across from agriculture right through, we have a very close working relationship with all industries to try and ensure that we provide the best possible experience to visitors. Of course, that's where we go to Russell Falls. That's where there is a magnificent experience of the tall tree.
So what we're getting is a stockpile, and in fact that's building. Well, that's a reflection of oversupply. So when you've got things oversupplied and it's in great abundance in relation to what people want to buy, the price falls. So this is no longer relatively scarce. And that should be a big signal to the industry, actually, that if that's overproduction thing is, they've got to look behind why that is. If it's permanent, then you better hurry up and find out some new markets for this. But it does seem as if for the moment, in terms of what we can sell at a profit from our forest, that profit is falling, and new markets must be found. We need, I think, veneer logs and all those sorts of things to come on, a fine furniture industry. You know, I think that we'll be very competitive internationally with the sort of timbers we've got. And we found that with yew and pine in the past. The Regional Forest Agreement, which involved a debate about and an agreement, presumably, between forest industry groups and those interested in biodiversity, was designed actually to achieve a balance between the forest exploitation as an industry and the environmental impact on life forms and plant life and these important things.
I've got all the statistics from the Bureau of Statistics, and what they show is that in the last 10 years we have lost 4,000 jobs in downstream processing in the timber industry in Tasmania. Now, since the RFA was signed, that's the Tasmanian RFA in 1997, which promised jobs to the timber industry, we've seen 1,000 jobs go in downstream processing. So, and that's just in 5 years. So it's a pretty consistent trend. The jobs in logging and forestry are pretty much holding their own, but where we're seeing the decline is in downstream processing. So that's really a big shame for people in the local communities that rely on forestry in this state, because they're the people that are losing out. The forest manager in this state, Forestry Tasmania, say they are planting more trees than they cut down and that the industry is sustainable, but we believe they are misusing that word. They're using the word sustainable to say they're sustaining eucalypt production and maybe radiata pine production, but we believe and we know that there is less myrtle, there is less celery top pine, there's less sassafras, and all these high quality, uniquely Tasmanian woods, there's less of them every year, and they're doing nothing to sustain the ongoing supply of these woods, and they're doing nothing to sustain the ecological integrity of the forest from which they're harvesting. And it's really that diversity in the forest that maintains its health and maintains its ability to keep producing these fine timbers. So we really believe that although Forestry Tasmania say they're planting more than they cut down, we believe that ecologically we're heading for disaster because we're going into monoculture, and we're also focusing just on one product as the main output from Tasmania, which is pulpwood. Well, when you go into a logging operation like this, it's hard to understand what has driven this process. In my mind, the way I see it is that at the moment, Forestry Tasmania are under a lot of pressure to end old growth logging. So what they're doing is they seem to be focusing their energy disproportionately in these forests at the moment. So we're seeing more old growth forests felled representatively than perhaps the regrowth forests and the plantation wood. And it seems to me though as though it's a land grab. They're getting it while they can in this rush to convert it to regrowth or plantation, such that it then comes into their long-term strategy of just mowing these things over every 25 to 90 years for pulpwood. So to me, it seems mad when you see the wastage, but I think there's a big agenda operating there, and that's a land grab because they can see that the end is coming fast. But the tragedy of it is that the old growth forests in the south of Tasmania, there's only about 5,000 hectares left within the production areas of forests, and that's down from 35,000 hectares just 10 years ago. So we've seen a huge loss already, and if we keep going the way we're going, there will be none left within this coming decade. Our current research project is to do an inventory of all the timber that's left behind in a typical logging operation in a Tasmanian old growth forest. And I'll be releasing those findings soon, and essentially what they're showing is that in a forest that had about, I guess, 50% eucalypt and 50% special species such as myrtle and celery top pine, we're seeing them take half the eucalypt volume of the forest and get this, just 1% of the special species wood. Now, what they've done with the remaining wood, which is largely these beautiful timbers, is leave them behind. They've fallen the trees or pushed them over and left them behind, and some of it's been pushed up into big piles called windrows so that they'll burn easily when they come to burn the coop. So what we're seeing is this wanton disregard of the value of Tasmanian woods, and we're also seeing that they've cut all age classes. So in this forest we would have seen trees 400 years old right down to trees that are about 1 year old and everything in between, and what they've done is pushed over the lot. So there's no potential for this forest to keep regenerating itself and provide wood and habitat into the future.
In any event, I think everybody would like to see something better happen with timber than wood chips. I think in the end public pressure will prevail on this, and the changes that happen in forestry will be a mix of a market and what you can sell for a profit as against you know, the environmental preservation argument. You're only going to grow a tree if you're in business and for the shortest possible time before you want to sell it on a plantation. Now, I mean, you know, I've seen these numbers at as low as 20 years. So whereas a tree has its full commercial value much later than this, and it has a full environmental and natural value at even later than that. So those who want short-term profits would cut the tree down after a brief period. And so, but that's driven by this kind of fact that the further you go out in the future, the heavier the discount of that return, future return, in the present value calculation.
20 or 30 years' time, I would like to be known around the world as being a place that got it right, and that it's a place that's known around the world as being a place of wildness, a place of creativity, a place of passion, a place of peace, a place that got it right. And I think it's in our hands, and if we can, we'll make it be. And I think the beautiful thing is that there are people here who are committed to that. Absolutely. We never give up hope. You never give up hope. And I think that when you look back at an historical sort of level too, you look at the changes in this place over 30 years, there have been major, major changes. But we just need to go the next step. And I think that then we can create something really special here.